You're listening to Dakota Spotlight. My name is James Wolner. Today is kind of a big day for the podcast and kind of special for me. I'm adding something new to the show, a series I'm calling Friday Night Fiction. That's right, fiction, on a true crime podcast. Is that weird? Maybe, but I'm a little weird and I think you're going to like it. Now, before I explain what it is and why I'm doing it, please know this. Don't worry, nothing's going away. Dakota Spotlight is still your true crime show, and yes, Season 12 is still coming. But now there's more, something extra, something fun. Friday Night Fiction will drop occasionally on Fridays. These are fictional crime stories written by me, inspired by real life in North Dakota. After years of digging into true crime here in the Midwest, I've seen some things. I've read thousands of pages of police files, talked to investigators, pored over case details that never made the headlines. And what I've learned is this: anything can happen, even right here in the Dakotas. So what I've done now is let those experiences stew and spin into something creative. Now let me tell you more about Friday Night Fiction. When I was a kid in the 60s, I thought everything on TV was in black and white. Turns out we just had a black and white TV. Then sometime around 1972 or so, we got a color set, maybe a Westinghouse or an RCA, and I remember thinking, wow, now the world's really gonna pop. So there I am, 8 years old, on the floor in front of the TV, and it turns out all the shows I loved, the Twilight Zone, Dragnet, the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, they were still in black and white. And they told stories that stuck with you. Simple, classic setups, strong mood, a little mystery, a little murder, and always that guiding narrator voice pulling you through. That's the spirit I'm shooting for with Friday Night Fiction. Each episode is a fictional crime story by me with a nod to those old school shows, inspired by the types of crimes I've learned about. And just a heads up, the intro might sound quite a bit different from this usual narrator voice, and that's intentional. It's a tribute to those old black and white shows I grew up watching, and I know a lot of you probably did too. This series is for you, and for anyone who loves a good story with a little mystery, a little mood, and a throwback vibe. So, lean back, close your eyes, and let me take you somewhere that feels like black and white, but tells a story rooted in today. Here is my first installment of Friday Night Fiction.
This episode contains explicit content, including profanity and depictions of violence and murder. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening, and welcome to my first installment of Friday Night Fiction. Tonight's story is titled Park Like a Fargonian, as it comes to us from that quaint, unassuming corner of America known as Fargo, North Dakota. A place where the winters are long, the parking lines are faint, and the morals are best left to interpretation. Our story begins with a bit of harmless online mischief, a social media group, a few crooked parking jobs, some grainy smartphone footage, and the kind of snide commentary one usually reserves for family dinners or political debates. But as it often does, the humor begins to curdle, and then, somewhere between the yellow-stained cigarette fingers of an amateur enforcer and the homemade morality of a thrift store patriot, things turn rather messy. Now I must warn our more sensitive listeners, what begins with poorly aligned bumpers and sarcastic hashtags escalates to something a touch more severe: murder, cruelty, and what some might describe as divine retribution. Oh, but don't worry, we will keep the body count neatly arranged, and the conscience just murky enough to keep everyone comfortable. After all, this is America, and justice, like parking, can be a rather subjective matter. Park Like a Fargonian is 38 minutes long in 7 chapters. Now, enjoy the show. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Park Like a Fargonian by James Wolner. Chapter 1. Just a year or two before it all happened, the social media group Park Like a Fargonian was harmless. Fargo residents posted photos and videos of bad parking jobs, minivans crookedly parked across the lines at Walmart, a pickup truck hogging multiple spaces at Target, or a Tesla encroaching another space at Scheels. The photos were accompanied by sarcastic captions, poking good, clean fun. The locals laughed with each other, tagged their friends, and played along. If nothing else, the playful videos and online posts brought some much-needed entertainment to the northern town, a place with long, dark winters and where the snow and packed ice often lie so thick over the city's pavement that distinguishing one parking stall from another becomes nearly impossible. At what point exactly Park Like a Fargonian first started devolving from something funny towards something fatal is still up to debate. What's certain is that over time the tone darkened, humor gave way to indignation. The captions, posts, and videos, once clever and harmless, evolved into a form of public shaming. By 2025, bad parking wasn't just an annoyance anymore. According to Park Like a Fargonian, it had become a symptom of moral decay. Some say that ground zero of the decline might be linked to a simple comment made to the group in March of 2024 by a user named iHeartHorses896. "Stop bullying people and get a real job," the comment said. Some say the comment was nothing more than a plea for understanding and compassion. After all, they argued, a little teasing among neighbors was one thing, but filming unsuspecting drivers and tagging them by name on social media turned mild ribbing into outright public shaming. The members of the online group Park Like a Fargonian interpreted the comment differently, and the backlash was swift. Within hours, a flood of replies buried the original post under mockery, rage, and outright cruelty. One user sneered, "Go whine to your mommy if you can't handle real talk." Others hurled insults and personal attacks at iHeartHorses896. The message was clear. Park between the lines, follow the rules, chew your food with your mouth closed. Otherwise, consider moving elsewhere. It was soon after this exchange that an offshoot of Park Like a Fargonian was born. They called themselves the Lot Lords, self-appointed enforcers of poor parking justice. Their leader was Darlene Hayes, an unemployed 46-year-old parking vigilante, armed with a smartphone and an unshakable sense of righteousness. She prowled Fargo in her oversized Ford Super Duty, scanning for bumpers creeping over the lines or radial tires straying too far from the curb. Darlene spoke with animated hand gestures, punctuating her words with her rotating short list of stock phrases. "Not on my watch," "at least in my book," and "a taste of their own medicine" were her favorites. In one interview with a local reporter, Darlene claimed she had recently been fired from her job at the Budget Hut thrift store after refusing to serve a customer whose T-shirt she deemed disrespectful. According to Darlene, the shirt featured the American flag, but it was so faded that the blue was almost gone and the stars were barely visible. "I'm a patriot," she said. "Disrespecting our flag like that, that's as bad as burning it, at least in my book." Darlene's lot lord accomplices were Wayne and Rick. Wayne Cutter was a giant of a man, a retired trucker with silver hair, piercing blue eyes, and one unmistakable accessory, a burning cigarette that never seemed to leave his thick, yellow-stained fingers. As a guest on a local radio show, Wayne once laid out his personal philosophy for the host. "I tell folks, I may have a long beard, but my fuse is short. Don't disrespect me, and we'll get along just fine." To Wayne, the lot lords weren't vigilantes, they were simply keeping Fargo accountable. "There are rules, after all," he said on the air, his voice raw and worn down by decades of cigarette smoke. Rick Smith was the youngest of the trio, a local landscaper who had twice ran unsuccessfully for city council. Rick managed the lot lords' YouTube channel, obsessing over views, engagement, and ad revenue. Their controversial videos berating bad parkers racked up thousands of hits. The more dramatic the encounter, the more lucrative it became. The format of their YouTube videos was always the same. First came the prayer, their signature moment before the real action began. The camera would cut to Darlene, parked in her truck, phone propped up on the dash, while Wayne and Rick appeared in split screen beside her, heads bowed. "Before we begin, folks, let's take a moment," Darlene always said, voice steady, hands folded. "Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts. We ask for your wisdom and guidance as we go about our duty, reminding others to walk with respect and accountability. Lord, help us be patient and fair, to act with good intentions, and to encourage others to do what is right. Amen." Second came the hunt. Darlene, Wayne, and Rick would separate, each patrolling local parking lots, Target, Walmart, and the malls around town. Cut to Darlene, one hand on the wheel, weaving between parked cars, eyes sharp, a smug smile curling on her lips. Cut to Wayne, cigarette in one hand, the other resting lazily on the steering wheel. Cut to Rick, cruising in his rusted Ford F-100, windows down, scanning for prey. Finally came the catch, the final segment of the video. Once one of them spotted the offender of the day, they'd call for backup. Within minutes, the other two roared into the parking lot, encircling the target's vehicle like a pack of wolves closing in. If the offender had parked too close to another car, the lot lords returned the favor, maneuvering their trucks so that the driver had no chance of opening a door. "A taste of their own medicine," Darlene would laugh into the camera. Then they'd move out of sight and wait for the unsuspecting driver to return. Confusion came first, followed by frustration, and when the tension peaked, the lot lords pounced, pressing in with their cameras and demanding explanations. "Not on my watch," Darlene would bark, camera locked on the driver's face, insisting on a public apology. Some people did apologize. Others said nothing, staring straight ahead like an accused murderer, shielding their face from the press, ducking into their car, waiting for the lot lords to release them. And the lot lords did always release them, though never before getting all the footage they wanted and needed. The best performing videos, the real moneymakers, were the ones that got confrontational. Their fans couldn't get enough of what they called curbside royalty, people who carried themselves like kings and queens of the asphalt, as if no rules applied to them. To their fans, they were champions of justice. To others, they were bullies with a platform. But by 2025, even those who saw the lot lords as bullies couldn't ignore a strange new reality. Bullying, once universally condemned, wasn't just tolerated anymore. It was somehow celebrated and encouraged. Chapter 2. At 5:04 p.m. on Friday, February 7th, Tom Warner shut down his computer, pulled on his heavy winter coat, grabbed his hat and gloves, and closed the door to his office at Great Prairie Savings and Loans of Fargo, where he worked as a loan officer. On his way out, he called out to a few lingering colleagues, "Have a nice weekend, folks." Tom Warner lived for the weekends, not for parties, not for hunting or fishing trips, not for drinks or poker nights. Tom worked diligently all week so that by Friday evening, His time belonged to 3 people: his wife Sarah, his 9-year-old daughter Emma, and his 7-year-old son Luke. When he pushed through the bank's glass doors into the parking lot, the February evening felt colder and darker than he anticipated. A thick blanket of dusk was moving in overhead, and he checked his watch quickly, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. But no, everything was fine. He'd be home by 5:25, just as planned. His Ford started up without hesitation in the frigid air. He let the engine idle, cranked the heat, and closed his eyes for a second, letting the day's tension drain away. On the AM dial, the local talk radio station chirped away. "And another thing," a woman's voice broke in, frustration evident. "I just saw those lot lords corner some college kid outside the grocery store last night. That poor boy could barely speak. They had their phones all in his face." "You're saying you think the lot lords have gone too far?" the radio host asked. "Gone too far?" the caller snapped. "They're bullies, plain and simple." Tom listened, frowning for a second. Cornering a kid seemed kind of extreme, but he shook it off. "We got another caller," the host said. "Justin in West Fargo, what do you think?" "Larry, I disagree with your last caller. I'm so sick and tired of people taking advantage and not living by our rules. I think the lot lords are heroes, man." Tom switched off the radio and put the Ford into drive. Don't people have better things to do, he thought. He certainly had better things to do, like getting home to Sarah, Emma, and Luke. He pulled away from Great Prairie Savings and Loans and headed east. Tom and Sarah Wolner had worked it all out years ago, back when they were still expecting Emma. They wouldn't be one of those families scrambling on a Friday evening, wondering what was for dinner or what the plan was for the weekend. No frantic last-minute stops to the store for milk, no Saturday runs to town for tape, glue, crayons, laundry detergent, or gas for the snowblower. And they wouldn't waste energy worrying about how other families operated. No exhausting dinner parties where the adults gathered around a perfectly set table while the kids were handed a slice of microwaved pizza and told to please go play by yourself. Tom and Sarah wanted something different. Their children wouldn't be pushed aside. Emma and Luke would be included, involved, and always know that they were loved. They lived their lives together, structured and intentional. By Thursday night each week, everything for the weekend was planned and stocked: groceries, school supplies, project materials. Tom even filled his gas tank every Thursday after work, no matter what the gauge read. Why waste a single minute at a gas station on a weekend? Not when he had a family to be with. Not when he had Emma, Luke, and Sarah. And so when Tom Wolner headed north on the interstate towards his home in the town of Harwood, a quick 15 minutes away, he knew he wouldn't be making any pit stops. He'd be home at 5:25, just as planned. There'd been a time when Tom questioned his single-minded devotion to his family, but somehow every minute away from Sarah and the kids felt like a moment lost forever. He knew that someday, many years in the future, when he was old and brittle, his memories might start to fade. He might forget the sound of Luke's giggles, the sweetness of Emma's voice, or the way Sarah's beautiful eyes lit up when she laughed. Old age might try to steal those memories away from him someday. Still, he had once wondered, shouldn't he have a hobby or a night out once in a while? Searching for an answer, he had visited Pastor Westergaard, who had welcomed him into his home. "You're just a family man, Tom," the pastor said gently. "Follow your heart. Follow your God." Those few words were all Tom needed. From that day on, he embraced his role wholeheartedly, devoting every spare moment to Sarah and the kids, and he never looked back. Tom Wolner was going to create as many moments as he could, memories with Emma, with Luke, with Sarah, so if the day ever came when he started to forget things, His heart would be so overflowing with memories they could never, ever run dry. And each Sunday morning after service, as Tom stood outside the church with his family, he and Pastor Westergaard exchanged a knowing glance. Tom's heart and his faith had led him here, to this life, to this city, to this church, and most importantly, to Sarah, Emma, and Luke. As he pulled into his driveway, the garage door lifted slow and steady, welcoming him home. The time was 5:25 p.m., exactly and perfectly. Chapter 3. The weekend unfolded just as planned. Friday night, tacos for dinner, then all four of them sat down and worked on their latest jigsaw puzzle, Sarah's pick this time, the Sound of Music movie poster. Later, with the kids bundled up in pajamas, they all curled up on the couch for yet another rewatch of The Sound of Music. They sang along, laughed, and mimicked the Von Trapp children. Luke, ever the performer, delivered a perfect impression of little Gretel Von Trapp, insisting he wasn't tired, before promptly curling into Sarah's lap, his voice trailing off mid-lyric. Sarah ran her fingers gently through Luke's hair, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. "Still awake, buddy?" she whispered. Emma lasted a little longer, but by the time Edelweiss played, she was curled up against Tom, her eyes heavy. "I like this song," she murmured before drifting to sleep. On Saturday, they painted Emma's bedroom. She wasn't 6 anymore, she was 9. Time for something new. She'd chosen a painted daisy design, and Sarah and Tom had all the supplies laid out and ready in the garage. They tackled the job in chunks, careful and deliberate. Tom and Sarah took turns painting with Emma and baking bread with Luke. Luke liked kneading the dough. He liked the smell and how the sticky dough got stuck on his fingers, but his most favorite part was pounding down the dough after the first rise. His little fists jab at the soft white blobs like a little prize fighter. And all day they listened to music, or more accurately, they listened to Sarah and Luke singing and making up new lyrics for The Sound of Music's My Favorite Things. Emma had giggled at one point in the afternoon as she dipped her brush into the paint. "Mom, you sound just like Julie Andrews." And by the time the last brush stroke was dry and the last batch of bread and buns were cooling on the rack in the kitchen, Saturday was winding down. Dinner was simple, tomato soup and the still warm fresh bread with melted butter. And as was customary while eating, they talked about the next day too. This time, the next day was Super Bowl Sunday. They'd head to the church in the morning, and in the afternoon, the Westergaards were invited over to watch the game. Luke perked up at the mention of their Sunday guests, his face lighting up. "Is Pastor Westergaard coming over tomorrow?" he asked, practically bouncing in his seat. "Awesome, I'm going to show him my bread." At church the next morning, Pastor Westergaard's sermon focused on kindness, tolerance towards others, and of course, a little bit about the Super Bowl. A few chuckles rippled through the congregation when he suggested compassion, even for the Minnesota Vikings, who had, once again, not made their way to the big game. The Westergaards arrived just before kickoff, Laura carrying a pan of hot dish, the pastor balancing a tray of frosted cupcakes. "We come bearing gifts," he announced with a grin. Luke practically dragged Pastor Westergaard to the kitchen, proudly showing off his golden brown loaves of bread. Meanwhile, Emma led Laura Westergaard down the hallway. "Come see my new room," she said, eagerly pushing open the door to show off the daisy-painted walls. And then, with snacks set up and soft drinks poured, everyone gathered in the living room for the game. For the next several hours, laughter and simple joy filled the home, warm and effortless, the kind that came naturally between friends and family. Until finally, along with the game, the weekend at the Wolner home was over. It had gone just the way Tom Wolner liked it, filled with love, enjoyment, and no unpleasant surprises. Chapter 4. When interviewed by police, Tom Wolner said he felt something was wrong the moment he stepped out of the shower that Monday morning. It was just too quiet, he told them. Our Monday mornings can be a little hectic, and when I didn't hear Sarah and the kids at breakfast, I just felt something. As he pulled on his shirt and worked at tying his tie, a stray thought flickered through his mind. Maybe they were playing a joke on him. Maybe he would walk into the kitchen and find them hiding, giggling behind the counter, playing hide-and-seek on a Monday morning. That's all my brain could come up with at the time, he later said. But when Tom stepped out of the bedroom, he didn't find his family in the kitchen. Still working on his necktie, he walked through the house, calling out, "Where, oh where is the Von Trapp family?" Then he saw them. Sarah, Emma, Luke. They were sitting on the living room couch, clinging to each other, their mouths covered in duct tape, hands zip-tied behind their backs. And they were not alone. 3 masked men. One of them stood behind Luke, pressing a pistol to the boy's temple. Another man, stocky and broad-shouldered, gripped a double-barreled shotgun, leveling at Tom's forehead. A third man stepped forward, his voice steady and deliberate. "You've got 1 hour to bring us $1 million in cash." Tom's stomach dropped. No cops, no delays, or we start with the boy. Tom's hands shook, his throat was dry. I don't have access to them." The man with the shotgun moved closer. "You're alone, officer. Figure it out." Tom's eyes darted to Sarah, to Emma, to Luke. Luke's small chest heaved, his eyes wide, frozen in terror. "You've got 59 minutes and 30 seconds left. No cops, no delays, or we kill them." Tom's body jolted into action. His hands fumbled for his keys. He didn't look back as he bolted to the door, his heart hammering, his breath ragged. He tore out of the driveway and was up on I-29, heading south in 90 seconds, his mind racing. 20 minutes to the bank, 20 minutes back. That left him just under 15 minutes inside the bank. He could shave off a few minutes on the drive, but if he got pulled over by a cop, it was all over. Later, he would describe the dash to the bank as moving in slow motion. "My brain had never been so clear," he told a detective. "It was like I could see every possible mistake before it happened." He even had the presence of mind to set his cruise control 6 miles over the speed limit, fast enough to be efficient, slow enough to avoid attention. He knew every second mattered. One wrong lane change, one pothole, one fender bender, and it could all be over. His knuckles went white against the steering wheel. His jaw ached from clenching. His eyes flicked in the rearview mirror. 21 minutes later, he pulled into the West Acres parking lot, skidding to a spot outside Great Prairie Savings and Loans. The moment his car was in park, he was scurrying to the bank. His good friend and colleague, Annie McAllister, spotted him immediately. "He looked like he'd been dragged through a storm," she later told a reporter. "His tie was crooked and he looked pale. It just wasn't the Tom I knew." Tom approached her at the counter. "Annie, listen carefully. I need $1 million in cash now." Annie blinked. "Tom, that's... what? That's way over the... I'd have to ask Greg." "There's no time," Tom said, his breath shallow. He lowered his voice. "They have Sarah. They have Emma and Luke. If I don't bring them the money, they kill them." Annie's face drained of color. "Oh my God, Tom." "No police," Tom whispered fiercely. "If they see cops, my family dies. Just trust me, please. The bank is insured. We can work it out later." Every instinct told Annie to hit the silent alarm, to call for help, but this was Tom. Steady, logical Tom, and she'd never seen him like this. Annie swallowed hard, then nodded. "Okay, Tom, go wait in your office." It felt like she was gone for days, Tom later told the FBI. The security footage would show that it took her less than 9 minutes. She reappears in the hallway, walking out of the vault, a black gym bag gripped tightly in both hands. Tom's hands trembled as he took it from her. Annie grabbed his wrist. Tom, please be careful. His lips quivered, but no words came. He just turned and strode briskly towards the exit. He checked his watch. 24 minutes left. A 20-minute drive. 4 minutes to spare. It wasn't good, but it had to be enough. Chapter 5. A thin layer of snow crunched beneath Tom's shoes as he sprinted from the bank's doors into the parking lot. The wind cut through his thin coat, but he barely felt it. His heart was hammering too hard. He clutched the gym bag to his chest. Then his stomach lurched. His car was surrounded. 3 massive trucks boxed it in. Darlene's Ford Super Duty in front, Wayne's Dodge Ram behind, and Rick's Ford F-100 on the driver's side. And the lot lords were waiting. A wave of panic and nausea rolled through Tom. Time was draining away. He swallowed hard, forcing his breath to steady. Focus, focus. Darlene stood grinning, her phone held high. She was already live streaming and speaking directly to her online viewers. Rick had a digital SLR mounted on a tripod. Wayne flicked his cigarette to the ground and pulled out his phone. Tom's heart pounded as he approached them. "Excuse me," he shouted, rushing up. "Move your trucks, I need to leave." Darlene tilted her phone slightly, adjusting the shot. "Oh, you hear that, folks? Someone needs to leave. Wow, Mr. Important over here must be a really busy guy." Tom swallowed hard. Not now, not this. "I'm in a hurry. Just move your trucks. I don't have time for this." Rick snorted then. "Yep, they always in a hurry, aren't they? Rules don't apply to some people, I guess." Tom's grip tightened around the gym bag. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "This is an emergency." The lot lords erupted into laughter. Not nervous laughter, not confused laughter, real gut-deep, amused laughter. Wayne stepped forward then, towering over Tom. "Everyone's got an excuse. You think you're above the law?" Tom snapped. He sprinted towards Darlene's truck, slamming the hood with a fist, his face twisted in rage. "You pathetic morons, get a life and get out of my fucking way now." Wayne chuckled. Whoa, calm down, pal. No need to get violent." Darlene was in hog heaven. She could already see the YouTube numbers skyrocketing as she crafted the perfect title for her video. Entitled "Banker Throws Tantrum in Parking Lot." "Not until you apologize to the people of Fargo," she said. Tom spun toward them, his eyes wild, frantic, unhinged. "Violent? You don't understand. This is a life or death situation, you idiots. Move your fucking trucks, please. I'm sorry, okay? Pretty fucking please. I'm sorry I didn't park perfectly in a goddamn empty parking lot." Darlene tilted her phone closer. The lot lords knew they had what they'd been dreaming of. This was it, the creme de la creme, a gold mine. This, they knew, would be the single most profitable video ever. Darlene's grin widened. "See, folks? An apology. How about that? That wasn't so hard, now was it, banker boy?" she said. Wayne climbed into his truck and pulled it out of the way. Tom dove into his car, fired up the engine, and peeled out. "Please, Lord, let me make it home in time." Chapter 6. Tom didn't make it home in time. The masked men were gone. He found Sarah, Emma, and Luke lying dead in the living room on the floor. Sarah's arms were wrapped around the children as if in a final, desperate attempt to shield them from what was coming. According to FBI reports, they'd been executed, one bullet each to the head. One of the killers had helped himself in the kitchen while waiting for Tom to return. He'd eaten some of Luke's freshly baked bread and one of the Westergaard's Super Bowl cupcakes. FBI forensic teams extracted DNA from the cupcake wrapper. The match led to Damian Becker, a recently released inmate from North Dakota State Pen. Becker was known to run with Elleroy Jones and Jerry Wagner. The trio fled to Canada but were eventually caught and extradited back to North Dakota, where they stood trial for the murders of Sarah, Emma, and Luke. Each received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Tom Wolner did not attend the trial. Some in the community found this surprising. One comment circulating online read, "If my family had been taken from me, I sure as hell would have been there watching them get put away forever." Tom was unable to speak to the press. Instead, Pastor Westergaard became his spokesperson. What Tom Wolner needs now is privacy, time with himself, time with those who support him, and time with his Lord. We asked the press to leave him at peace. But the city of Fargo was anything but at peace. Fargo was outraged. Social media exploded with declarations about the decline of morals, the erosion of Midwestern values, and the senselessness of it all. And amid the outrage, the Lot Lord's YouTube channel exploded. The moment it became clear that entitled banker throwing a tantrum in a parking lot was Tom Wolner, desperately trying to save his family, everyone had to see it. Millions watched, the comments poured in, and so did the money. Many in the community distanced themselves from the Lot Lords now, condemning the group. At first, Darlene, Wayne, and Rick tried to push back, insisting the real villain was an erosion of morals and rule following. The murders of Emma, Luke, and Sarah Wolner were proof of that very thing, they said. Society was in decline, and it was time people stood up against it. But their arguments fell on deaf ears now. The tide had turned somehow. Reluctantly, they backed off and stopped patrolling Fargo's parking lots. But they weren't completely done. With their old videos still online, the money kept rolling in, even as their influence faded. All three of them drove brand new pickups, and each Wednesday night they met at Darlene's home, where they had beer and pizza and counted the week's earnings. After a brief time away, Tom Wolner returned to his job at the bank. His friend and colleague Annie McAllister noticed immediately that something fundamental had shifted in him. Once warm and quick to smile, Tom now moved through the office like a ghost, silent and withdrawn. He buried himself in paperwork, sometimes staying late into the evenings or even coming in on Saturdays. Annie couldn't help remembering how weekends used to be sacred to Tom, strictly reserved for Emma, Luke, and Sarah. Tom sold the house in Harwood at a devastating loss. No one wanted to buy a house where 3 innocent people had been murdered. But the truth was Tom just couldn't stay there another day. He moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment in Fargo. It wasn't uncommon for neighbors to spot Pastor Westergaard's car parked out front, sometimes late into the evening. Beyond that, Tom seemed to have no visitors at all. Some believed Tom had grounds for a civil suit against the Lot Lords. Lawyers from as far as Chicago, Minneapolis, and Atlanta reached out to him through Pastor Westergaard, offering services. But when Westergaard passed along the offers, Tom barely reacted. It seemed to be the last thing on his mind. "That's not what my heart or my God is telling me to do, Pastor," he said. Chapter 7. As the 2-year anniversary of the murders approached, Tom Wolner took a week off from work at Great Prairie Savings and Loan. The following Monday morning, he received a call from Fargo PD asking him to come in for a chat. In the interview room, a detective sat across from him, hands folded on the table. The cop looked uncomfortable, struggling to get the conversation started. "Tom, we appreciate you coming in," he began. "And before we get into anything else, I just want to say we're still just so deeply sorry for your loss." Tom nodded once, but didn't speak. The detective cleared his throat. "Now I know you heard the news. Darlene Hayes, Wayne Cutter, and Rick Smith were all found murdered last week in Darlene's home. Tom didn't react. He simply nodded. The detective watched him closely. Tom, I hope you understand I have a job to do, and considering everything that happened to you, I need to ask you a few questions. Tom leaned back slightly in his chair. We've learned you took last week off from work, is that right? Another silent nod. Well, if you don't mind me asking, did you take a trip? Tom met the detective's gaze, his expression calm. No, I didn't. The cop shifted in his chair. So you just stayed home then? Tom tilted his head slightly. Home? He repeated. His voice was quiet, reflective. I don't have a home anymore. There's just this apartment where I eat and where I try to sleep. It's a place, but it's not a home. The detective looked down at the floor. I hear you, Tom. A pause, then, carefully. I'm sorry we have to ask you these questions, but what did you do last week then? Tom folded his hands on the table. His voice was steady. What did I do? Not much, I guess. Just the same thing I always do. I followed my heart and my God. A heavy silence filled the room. The detective took a slow breath. Again, Tom, I have to ask, so if you can think back to last Wednesday night, between the hours of 10 p.m. and, say, 4 a.m. Thursday morning, where were you exactly? Where was I exactly? Tom shrugged, staring into the cop's eyes, holding his gaze. I was in my apartment, exactly in the kitchen, sitting exactly at the table. The detective exhaled. Okay, and I assume at some point you went to bed? Tom shook his head. You didn't sleep? No, Tom said. I sat at the table all night. I was working on a jigsaw puzzle. The detective crossed his arms. I don't imagine anyone was there who could verify that. For the first time, the faintest trace of a smile touched Tom's lips. As a matter of fact, there is someone who can verify that. The detective straightened in his chair. Oh, who were you with? My good friend, Pastor Westergaard. The detective's eyes narrowed, his composure faltering for just a fraction of a second. You're saying Donnie Westergaard was with you all night, working on a jigsaw puzzle? That's right. Give him a call. He'll tell you. Would you like his phone number? The detective exhaled slowly, studying Tom. No, Tom, we can find Donnie Westergaard. The men studied each other in silence. Finally, the cop spoke. So, just by coincidence, on the exact night they were murdered, you and Pastor Westergaard happened to be sitting up all night working on a puzzle. Tom didn't blink. That's right. Finally, Tom pushed back his chair. The legs scraped softly against the floor. The detective didn't move, he just watched. Tom stood up, patting his pockets for his car keys. Then, for the first time, Tom's voice dropped lower, measured. My family was brutally murdered, he said, and I was unable to save them. Tom zipped up his jacket. You know, detective, those murders last week, awful stuff, almost like proof that society really is in decay. Isn't that what they always said? Tom tilted his head slightly. What was it they called themselves again? Oh, right, the Lot Lords. He let the name settle a bit. Maybe they were right all along. Where will it all end, detective? Well, good luck with your investigation. I hope you catch the folks that did that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to get to work. That's what my heart and my God told me to do when I woke up this morning. The detective's eyes followed as Tom Wolner reached the door. He opened it slowly, stepped out. and was gone. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this first installment of Friday Night Fiction. Mr. Wolner made it to the bank and home again. He even apologized, although it seems he wasn't forgiven. But as we've learned, timing is everything. In the end, the lot lords received far more attention than they deserved, or perhaps what they deserved. I wouldn't know. What do you think? Some would call it justice, others might call it murder. But Fargo, I suspect, will simply call it closure. If you find yourself tempted to film a stranger in a parking lot, remember, you really never know what kind of day they're having. I hope you're well wherever you are and whenever you are. If it's Friday, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday night. And we will see you again soon here at Friday Night Fiction. Good night. Park Like a Fargonian is a work of fiction created and owned by James Wolner, 2025, all rights reserved. Names, characters, businesses, organizations, places, events, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The author and publisher assume no responsibility for any perceived associations, misinterpretations, or unintended similarities. No real persons or groups should be inferred from this story. No parts of this story may be reproduced, distributed, or adapted in any form without explicit written permission. Unauthorized use of this material is strictly prohibited under applicable copyright laws. Check out more at dakotaspotlight.com.